Welcome back to another episode of the Miami Heat Chronicles. My name is Amir. We got Martel. You can find him at the Miami Heat Zone podcast. Before we start today's episode, make sure to subscribe to my channel, Team to Beat Miami Heat, and then, of course, Martel's the Miami Heat Zone podcast. So, Martel, we talked about this a little bit on the Miami Heat Roundtable episode last week regarding who the Miami Heat's starting five should be, and you didn't answer that question specifically. So I wanted to bring you on just to get a better understanding of who do you think should start for this Miami Heat team. So we know the roster is most likely not going to change. We have 14 men going in to the season, and the only way the roster will change is through a trade, which seems unlikely. So based on who we have on the roster today, what is your optimal starting lineup? And the second part of that question after you answer is, what do you think Spo is actually going to implement? So what do you want, and what do you think is actually going to happen in reality?
So remember, they said that we're running it back. So Terry's right. I think it's going to be Terry, Tyler, Jimmy, Jovic, Bam. I just think that we've seen what Duncan Robinson has looked like. Duncan Robinson has improved his game, but I just don't think they're going to make that swap. I think that Duncan Robinson is a better fit. I'm not saying he's a better player than Tyler Herro, but the NBA comes down to matchups, fit, and schemes. And sometimes you got to be willing to sacrifice, like a Ginobili and like countless other stars, like a Jamal Crawford, who could have went to any other team and start. However, when you realize a role, and like a lot of people don't realize this, the NBA is about, can you play your role? And if you can play your role, that will help maximize your team. Because, like I said, if we're going to be running it back for the 6th, 7th, 8th time, we've seen what Tyler Herro looks like in the starting lineup. And I just don't think that he plays efficiently enough. It's kind of like what Stephen A. Smith said. He doesn't bring his A game enough. He's not efficient enough to be next
Consistent
to
enough either.
and consistent enough to be next to Jimmy and Bam and to actually help us go over the top. He doesn't play well enough. So what I would like to happen is just swap out Duncan Robinson for Tyler Herro. But like I said, I just don't see that happening, especially if they want to eventually trade Tyler Herro. People don't realize when you come off the bench for multiple seasons, now you're looked at as a bench player. And I understand Tyler doesn't want to be, deemed as a six man because now you're marginalized across the NBA in terms of money, role, and certain teams that would actually have interest in you.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's no chance that Tyler's going to come off the bench. I think in all likelihood, they would have to persuade, if they want to break up that backcourt, they would have to convince Terry for the betterment of the team to come off the bench. Like, you're a little bit older. Like, I don't know what they would use, but he's going to be 30 years old next season. Obviously was not drafted by the team. So Terry seems like he'd have a willingness to do anything to compete and to win and to fit in with this team. Remember why he came to this Miami Heat team, right? Like, who was his favorite player? Like Dwayne Wade. So he wants to be part of this organization, and he wants to help this organization win a championship, which is just funny to say because this is a guy who's been on the team for freaking 3 months, right? He only came mid-season, and with his attitude, he seems like he would be willing to take that sacrifice. Remember, we used that word a lot in the past videos where Tyler Herro at this point has an ego. He's young, and he doesn't want to devalue himself based on perspective, right? To your point, like if he does come off the bench and he's labeled that sixth man, then he's in that category, which I don't know how much it'll impact the amount of money he makes. Because if it leads to championships and winning and still having good stats, he could maybe get a bag again, but he would be in that Lou Will kind of conversation, like that Jamal Crawford, like he's going to be that sixth man possibly in the future. Like if he's a sixth man at age 24, what is he going to be at age 29, 30, right? When he's looking for his second contract, when he is going to be like 27, 28 years old, I think when this contract ends. So I think that's a good point. But what do you think about it that lineup defensively? Like just any lineup, because right now losing Caleb Martin, who he had a up and down last year, offensively and defensively, right? Like he was helping with that point of attack, with Haywood, with Kyle Lowry, but like even though Kyle Lowry wasn't like moving laterally as quickly as he had in the past, he still was pretty he was still tenacious defender, right? He wasn't a liability. He was taking those charges. So losing Kyle Lowry, losing Caleb Martin, like, do you think that's going to impact us defensively with the starting lineups that you mentioned and that I mentioned before in the past? Like, what do you think about our defensive scheme with those types of players in the lineup.
The problem is, and this is something that we don't talk about enough, is that we do not have elite scorers. We do not have scorers that they can just score the ball with ease. So then it puts pressure on Tyler. It puts pressure on Terry. It puts pressure on everyone else in the starting lineup because, like I said, I love Bam, 20 and 10 type of guy, solid defender. I don't need him to do anything more. Jimmy Butler, he's not going to give you that 25 every single game or even those 30-point games every single game. You see what I'm saying? So I know that you're going to be talking about defense, but the problem is we have issues scoring the ball too. So we want to lean offensively, we want to lean defensively, but the problem is we do not have the right pieces to put together outside of Jimmy and Bam. But even Jimmy and Bam, they don't really look like they fit well together either in terms of I don't really see them doing pick and roll or lobs with each other. I don't see any of that. I don't see any. This is the problem with the Miami Heat. For a team that has been to this long with each other, they lack chemistry, in my opinion. They do not play like a team that has been together for 5 years at all. And I think that's the issue. So we could talk about all the different lineups, switching this, switching that, but I don't know what the issue is. I don't know why Spo can't get it to work. How can this team not work and it's been 5 years?
I'll give you a few reasons. 37 different starting lineups, injuries.
Yes,
That's
yes,
part of it.
but even when they're together, Jimmy Bam and Tyler, it's like it almost never works.
Oh, that's evident. Not so one reason is injuries. Like in the 5 years, Jimmy, Bam,
Yeah,
Tyler, Kyle, Oladipo, like every draw, like Dragic, every team has had the injuries, especially the last few years. But then also, you said it right there. Those three don't fit well together. Bam and Jimmy fit better together than the trio do, right? But even when you get down to the duo level, they're still not the perfect elite duo because
they
they
don't
don't
even do pick
score as
and
much.
roll. They don't even do pick and roll.
Yeah, Jimmy doesn't
And
set
then I
up
see a
Bam all the
bunch of
time.
people saying, "Oh, we got 4 20 point per game scorers." And if it does not, like, if there's no fluidity on the court with that, who cares? I don't see any fluidity with those four guys on the court sometimes. I know that
And
it's a very small sample size, but
and
even with
yeah,
those three,
and then the rest of the role players don't impact the offense as much because Jimmy has the
yeah.
ball in his hand. Bam is going to be doing his mid-range thing or post up, and then Terry and Tyler are going to take turns shooting their shots. So it's like the other guys are going to be standing around and waiting. Like Jovic, we talked about, he's been good, he's been developing, but like we know based on his experience with Serbia that he is a point forward. Like he needs the ball in his hand
But
to
see,
be
I have a
more.
problem with Jovic. He can only score in transition. Like if it's not a 3 point shot, he's really only scoring in transition.
Well,
He got
yeah,
to work on like trying to develop that mid range game. I need him to be more of an all around player. I think it's there. It's just taking a little bit more time. But Jaime is more of an all around player. He can hit the three. He can take it to the basket. He can hit the midi. I need. The problem is the Miami Heat do not have good scorers at all. Besides Terry Rozier, he's probably the only smoothest scorer where where scoring kind of comes a little bit easier for him. Other than that, Haywood Highsmith can't score like that. You know what I mean? Besides a 3 point shot. Like I said, Jovic, same thing. Jimmy and Bam, they can score the ball, but it doesn't come easy to them.
yeah. I mean, Jovic just turned 21 and he played overseas, obviously a different type of game, and so he's developing. Like, but he has a skill set that a lot of guys on our team don't have. Like, he's gonna only improve with the more reps he gets against NBA competition. Right now, he's standing in the corner and shoot threes, unless he's coming off the bench like he was and not playing with Jimmy and Bam and playing faster and in transition. When Jimmy and Bam and Tyler are on the floor, he has to just stand in the corner and shoot threes, right? That's all he's going to do. Like he can't play down low. He's there to spread the floor. So you're right.
But when we had the big three, Spo went to see some coach. And pretty much, because I don't know all the basketball terminology that they use, but pretty much nobody could be in LeBron or D Wade's driving lanes when they were coming up with the ball. And that's to help with the spacing.
Yep.
Spo needs to figure out something like that. If we're going to continue to run this back, we got to figure out how can we make this work.
Yeah, because I would rather, honestly, now rethinking this, I'd rather have Jovic come off the bench because again, he is just going to stand in the corner and play defense, get some rebounds. If you like with Jimmy and Bam again, you're not going to like do the transition piece like with Jimmy in there mostly, right? Jimmy slows the game down, and he wants the ball in the paint, like he wants it to be a half court game, but Jovic perhaps coming off the
He wants to
bench.
run.
He
But he wants to run.
Imagine him coming off the bench and being our backup point guard. We don't have a backup point guard. So why doesn't, like, now that I'm just thinking out loud right now, it's like maybe you do have Tyler Terry in the front court. You put Haywood in there to help with the defense, right? The liability of those two up front to help with the perimeter and point of attack. Bam's going to help everywhere. If Jimmy's healthy, Jimmy's still a good two-way player. So add in Haywood in there, right, with Jimmy and Bam, and then you have your small backcourt, and then have Jovic run the point like the Lamar Odom off our bench, that point forward, ball in his hand, transition with a young Hawkes, right? And then you have him, Hawkes, and then you have you have Khalil Ware, obviously. So add that third young piece right there. You have maybe Kevin Love, who could also spot up, help with rebounding, and then you have either Burks or Jay Rich or whoever, like at that shooting, or Duncan. Excuse me, you have Duncan in there, and then one of Jay Rich or Burks can be in there as well to spread the floor. Like that could be interesting. Like maybe you start off the year, they're going to tinker. We're going to be injured. Like the Tyler's going to get hurt. But Jimmy's going to miss like the 10th game of the season because he needs to go to the optometrist, right, to get his eyes checked out. Who the hell knows? So we know Haywood's going to start eventually. We know that like Jovic will start some games. Kevin Love will start a game. Who knows? Do you think that's interesting? Real quick before we hop off, Jovic as the backup point guard because we have no real point guard. So we do get rid of the size perspective in the starting lineup, but then our bench, Kevin Love, Kalel, Jovic, Hawkes, and Duncan. Like that's a lot of shooting. Not really good defense, but still, what do you think? That's good
There's a lot
size
of
up the bench.
shooting, but once again, I just think this team lacks scoring. Period. I just think they lack scoring, and we're paying the wrong five people. And I know a lot of people are saying, "Well, what do you mean? Like we shouldn't be paying Jimmy and Bam?" I'm not saying that. In terms of the collective group that we have, our five they don't maximize each other. That's the problem. I don't really see any chemistry with Jimmy and Bam.
Yep.
They don't really maximize each other. Tyler Herro, I really don't understand how Tyler Herro doesn't fit either because it's like you're the 3-point guy. So how do you not work with two guys that can't shoot threes? You see what I'm saying? And then Terry is just like I don't know, man. This
He's not a
Miami
good
Heat
off
team,
ball
bro.
player, to answer your part. Tyler's not a good off
They,
ball guy. You know what I mean? Like just
yeah,
stand in the
that is
corner.
true.
That's what he needs to do, to your point. Let Jimmy and Bam operate and play make. But Tyler has the ego. He wants to do the pick and roll. He wants to do the pull up jumpers. Like he can get downhill. A lot of times he gets blocked at the rim. We get frustrated with that. He has a good floater. A lot of times that causes him to have his injuries, right? Landing on the foot of big guys and all that stuff. That's how he hurt his ankle and missed freaking 40 games, or not 40 games because he got hurt twice. He missed like 18 games, then he missed however many with the ankle injury. But it is frustrating, but maybe Jovic as the backup point guard can help him score because he's not going to do anything but shoot a few threes with that starting lineup with Jimmy and Bam in there and Tyler and Terry. Off the bench, if he's controlling the game, he can maybe attack the basket more in transition, help set up his teammates because he's a good playmaker. Could be interesting. We'll see. Who the hell knows? But Spo's going to have a lot of guys to tinker with. This team is kind of deep. It's not great, but it's kind of deep, honestly. Like coming up, I mean, it is. I mean, you have Jay Rich coming back. You have Burks down now there. You have Kevin Love. You have Kalel. You have Palel Larson. You have pieces off the bench. You have Hawkes. Like it is kind of deep, right? It's not like elite, but we have that depth until we're gonna get hurt. So anyway, that's all I have for today's episode. Again, don't forget to subscribe to both our channels. Go to the Miami Heat Zone, subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys have a good one.